Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Victoria and today we're going to be talking about books that have mental health representation in them. So I love to see mental health representation in books. I love the way that I can relate to the characters. A lot of the time I have anxiety, and so I have read a lot of books where I have so heavily related to the characters. I really do have to be in the right mood for books that have anxiety in it though, because sometimes it can be triggering with certain like anxiety attacks and things if I'm not in the best mental state. But I have been struggling a little bit recently with my mental health and with my anxiety, and so I wanted to do this video to help anyone else who has some mental health struggles and wants to see themselves represented in the books that they're reading. So these are all romances that feature mental health representation. So the first one that I have is Chloe Leese. She features mental health rep in a couple of her books, but the two that I want to mention are Ever After Always, which is a marriage in trouble romance. A married couple, Freya and Aiden, are deciding to have a child, but they end up in a very difficult time in their marriage because Aiden, the husband, is suffering very strongly with anxiety. He has a lot of financial anxiety. He dealt with poverty growing up and as a child, and so now with the idea of them starting a family and having a family, all he can think of is how expensive it is to have a child and how he doesn't feel financially secure, and he never wants to deal with the poverty that he dealt with when he was growing up. And so he's working a lot and he's not talking to his wife about it, and it really puts a strain on their marriage. And so Freya tells him that she is done, that she wants to leave, and they end up going to therapy, couples therapy, marriage counseling, in order to talk to each other about it and deal a little bit more and see if that can help their marriage. And it ends up being this really, really amazing, touching story about them reconciling their marriage and getting through this really, really rough time in their marriage and learning how to communicate better and how to really understand what each other is going through. And I really, really loved this because one thing that it talks about in this romance is how marriage is never 50-50. It is never going to be a fully even trade. You give what each other can, and when somebody has anxiety and they're dealing really strongly with it, that or anything else that they're dealing with, whether it be a chronic illness or mental health struggle or physical struggle or anything, and you just can't that day. So let's say that you can only give 30% that day, the other person will give 70%, and it'll end up being an equal. And then the next time, maybe that other person can only give a certain amount and you can hand up more. And sometimes if you don't get to 100%, if the other person can't pick up your slack that day, you can sit down, you can talk about it, you can prioritize what needs to get done and put off some other things for a day that maybe you have some more mental energy to give or more mental strength to give. And I really, really loved that. And as somebody with mental health struggles, as somebody with a chronic illness, I really liked that idea of having a relationship be finding somebody who understands that and who will be willing to give a little bit more on the days that I can't. The other Chloe Leese book, anxiety representation, that I wanted to mention is Everything for You, which is the soccer romance. It's an age gap. It is about one hero who is the Bergman brother, who is newer to the soccer team. He's a professional soccer player and he's newer to this professional soccer team, and he ends up having a romance with another player on the team who is in his later years as a soccer player. He's getting to the end of his career and he is annoyed by Bergman's sibling because he sees everything that he doesn't have anymore. He sees that youth and that spryness and that excitement and that functioning body, because the older one is really getting to an age where he can't play at his best anymore. He is stiff. He deals with chronic pain because he's given everything, body and soul, to playing soccer. And the Bergman sibling is the one that has anxiety, and you see it on page with him starting to have anxiety attacks and starting to really get into his anxiety, and the other hero really is there to help him through them, help him. He holds his hand, he grounds him, and helps him really feel more at ease while within his anxiety. And I really loved seeing that, and seeing how I think his name is Gavin, the older one. I think the older one's name is Gavin, and seeing how he is able to help the Bergman brother, the Bergman sibling, through it, and through the anxiety, and how they fall for each other, and they really help each other out, and they really bring out the best in each other, and it becomes this really amazing relationship. And I really loved it. And I think Chloe Leese does an amazing job writing representation. She has so much representation in her books. If you're ever looking for a book that has representation in it, Chloe Leese does it so well. She has a hard of hearing representation, she has a amputee representation, she has digestive issues, she has celiac disease, she has autism, she has RA, so many things in her book. She has diabetes, she has so many things in her all throughout her books, and she really is the best at writing representation. So if you're ever looking for representation, Chloe Leese is my favorite one. The next one that I have for mental health representation is Saint by Sierra Simone. I read this recently. It is a romance about one hero named Aiden, who is dating this guy, and they've been dating for a while. And one night, Aiden deals with depression, and one night he gets very intense into his depression, and he really can't handle it anymore, and he contemplates suicide, and he ends up receiving a text message that puts him on a different path, and he ends up going and joining a monastery and becoming a monk. And this romance is his boyfriend, his ex-boyfriend, coming a couple of years later to the monastery, and they end up in a forced proximity situation where they go on a trip together to another country to visit different monasteries. And they really get to talk to each other. They deal with their attraction, through their attraction, and they really get to talk to each other. And the boyfriend gets to see and hear what Aiden dealt with, what he still deals with, and why he had to leave. And I really loved this. One of the big things that I loved about this was that within the monastery, Aiden actually starts he sees a therapist, he gets the help he needs, which I love. I love that the monastery helped him with that. They allowed him to go, and they pushed him to go and see a therapist and get medication and be able to be on the path to helping himself. And Aiden, while at the monastery, actually creates this kind of group for people who have mental health struggles, people who deal with anxiety and depression and any other mental health struggles, and they welcome anyone, and they're all talk to each other about it and about their beliefs and their religion and their feelings, and then also about their struggles with mental health. And I really loved it. I loved that he's an advocate for it, an advocate for himself after he's been through this and dealt with it for so long. And you can just see how one of the big things that's holding him back from being in a relationship with his boyfriend and leaving the monastery is that he doesn't know if he'll be able to handle his mental health outside of the monastery and outside of being a monk. It really helps center him, and I thought it was done so well. And Sierra Simone has just this absolutely amazing writing style. Nobody writes like Sierra Simone. Just the way that she presents things in her books is so beautifully done, and I absolutely loved this romance, and I would highly recommend it. The next one that I have is Take a Hint, Danny Brown by Talia Hibbert. This one is another one where the hero has anxiety. It is a fake dating romance between Zaf and Danny. Danny works in this building and Zaf is the security guard for it, and there is this picture that goes viral of Zaf carrying Danny out of the building, and everyone thinks that they're dating, and then they decide to fake date because the publicity that they're getting from this viral post is really helping Zaf's organization that he has. And the organization that he has is for men in sports, or just people in sports, and mental health. He was a rugby player and now runs this organization for promoting mental health representation and mental health, dealing with mental health within the sports community, because as a rugby player, he never really had the opportunity. It wasn't talked about. It wasn't something that was really allowed. It wasn't something that was commonly spoken of. It was very hidden. It was very shameful. And he doesn't want to have that for the children in sports now. And so he has this organization that helps promote talking about your feelings, and just talking about your feelings in general, not just talking about mental health, but talking just about life and how you're dealing with things, and helping young men. It's not socially acceptable to talk about your feelings and talk about your deep thoughts and everything for men, and Zaf has this organization to help young men deal with that and discuss it and make it less stigmatized for it. And I really, really loved that. And Zaf himself deals with anxiety, and so having been a professional sports player and been through it, he has this knowledge and this experience to help other people, and I really, really loved it. This romance is one of my favorites. Talia Hibbert is another one like Chloe Leese who does really good representation in her books. She has many, many representations in her books. She's got plus size representation. She has autism representation. She has fibromyalgia representation, and just so many things, and I really think that they're done so, so well, and I absolutely loved it. The next one that I have is, I think, the first one that I'm going to mention that it's a heroine who has mental health problems, and that is Next to You by Hannah Bonham Young. This one, the heroine in it has anxiety, depression, and agoraphobia. And this is a friends to lovers romance about a heroine who turns 27, I think it's 27, and she is not where she thought she was going to be. She's not in a good headspace. She doesn't know what path she wants to go on, and so she decides that what she wants to do is buy a bus and renovate it to live on it. And so that's what she does, and that's what she thinks is going to make her feel better about herself, and so that's what she does. And she has this friend who helps her renovate this bus, and they end up having a romance, and I really liked this. I actually read this for a reading vlog, and I think that it was very well done. The romance itself was so, so cute, and the heroine is dealing very much with grief. Her father died, and she doesn't deal well with it, and she has a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, and she also has agoraphobia, where she really struggles to leave her house. It is a serious, she does not like to leave her house. She goes days and days without leaving her house, without leaving her room, because that's where she feels safe and that's where she feels comfortable, and leaving her room, leaving her house creates this anxiety, this what could happen, what is going to happen, what do I do? I'm going to have to deal with things that I'm not anticipating happening, and she doesn't really know how to deal with that. And in this one is another one where she goes to therapy, she has a therapist, she is getting help for it. I think that she does take medication for it, and I really loved that, seeing someone who is in the journey. Mental health is a constant struggle. It is not something that just you take medication and it goes away. It is a constant wave of how you're feeling. Sometimes you're really feeling good and you feel like I'm on top of the world and I can handle everything and I can do it. And the next day you could be so low and not know what you're doing. And I loved seeing the heroine in this one be so in the middle of it and relating to her and her, I don't know what's going to happen next, and I don't know what to do, and I need to just do what I can to make myself feel comfortable. And for her, that's buying a bus. And I love that. Good for her. The next one that I have is Fall by Kristen Callahan. This is another hero who has depression, and this one, he is also a former addict in this series. This is a series of rock star romances, and it all follows a band. And in the previous books, it is talked about that this hero attempted suicide, and the other books are the other members of the band who are his friends dealing with their own fallout from what happened to the hero from this book. And in this book, you get the actual hero who attempted suicide. The hero, whose name is Jax, he ends up having a romance with the next door neighbor. So I believe the heroine is watching another one of the hero's bandmates' apartment while he is out of town, and she's staying there to feed his animals and water his plants and just watch the apartment. And she ends up being the neighbor to Jax, and they end up having a romance. And Jax, like I said, has attempted suicide. He has depression. He struggles every day with it, but he is getting help, and he is now out of rehab and out of like the hospital and everything, and he's back in his apartment, and he is trying to find ways to distract himself. And the heroine, who now lives next door, is a very addictive distraction, and she and him kind of have really good banter. They are both going through a lot, and they find solace kind of within each other. And it was a really sweet romance, really fun romance, and I really liked it. Okay, so the next one I have is A Court of Mist and Fury and A Court of Silver Flames, both by Sarah J. Maas. So the two of these are both PTSD and depression representation. And for these, I just wanted to mention them briefly because they have some of the best PTSD reactions that I've read. However, I can't really say a lot about them because the events that lead to their PTSD and their depression and everything is spoilers, so I cannot say it. Court of Mist and Fury is the second book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, and then A Court of Silver Flames is the spin-off book after the series. And Feyre deals with a shit ton in the events of A Court of Thorns and Roses. She goes through some very serious trauma at the end of that book, and just throughout her life in general. She grew up in poverty. She is the youngest daughter and was forced to basically hunt and provide for her family all by herself. Nobody helped her. Her mother died. Her father kind of just sat and withered away and didn't do anything. So she's had a hard life in general, and then what happens in A Court of Thorns and Roses and towards the end of A Court of Thorns and Roses is seriously traumatic. She deals with so much trauma. And in A Court of Mist and Fury, in the beginning of that book, she is seriously within her PTSD. She has so much struggle and unable to handle it in the beginning of that book, and you just see her full breakdown, and it is so heartbreaking to watch, to read. It is just, you're in her head and you feel her breaking. And I think that's one of the reasons why Court of Mist and Fury is such an amazing book, is because it starts that way, of her so deeply within this trauma, and you get to see her rise and her dealing with it and her starting to not really overcome it, but starting to be able to live again and be able to find that joy and find that happiness again, while always this is always going to be with her. Not to mention that Reese also has such severe trauma, and so he and her are really able to bond in that way, and they are able to understand what each other is going through in a way that other people don't know. They were both there under the mountain, and they both, while their trauma is different, it is both centered from under the mountain, and they bond over that, and they understand each other, and they don't push each other too far. And I think it's amazing and amazingly done, and I love it so much. And A Court of Silver Flames is Nesta's reaction and dealing with it after the events of the end of the Court of Thorns and Roses series, and Nesta gets violated in a way that is just so horrible, and she deals with so much at the end. I actually think that some of the other characters in A Court of Silver Flames push her a little too far, and that they don't really understand her, but I love seeing her in A Court of Silver Flames, and the way that you are in her head, and way she is feeling, and the way that she grows from it and finds her power, and it's just so fabulously done, and I will recommend it forever. Sarah J. Maas's just hits different. And then the last one that I want to recommend is In the Weeds by B.K. Borison. This is one that I actually would highly recommend to like really help you feel better. You are somebody who struggles with mental health and you want to read a book that's like so positive and just finding you're happy, which is something that they say in the Weeds. In the Weeds is such a good book for that. It just made me feel so joyful and so happy. It made me feel so happy, and I love it so much. And so this one, the heroine is really struggling. She has not found joy in things in a really long time. She really is just not finding, she's not happy. What she's doing is not bringing her joy anymore, and so she decides to go back to the last place that she felt really happy, and that is Lovelight Farms. And that is like the town. I can't remember what the town is, but Lovelight Farms is the farm that she was on. And she goes there and she ends up seeing this guy that she had a one-night stand with, and she ends up staying with him, but I can't remember his name. But she decides to go back to this place and take some time off work and actually just find her joy again, find her happy again, and really just jumpstart her life again, and just her whole system of just, she's been in this like rut, and she just wants to be happy again. The hero and her have an amazing romance. This hero is so sweet. He is an amazing hero. I love him so much. He is just the utter sweetheart, cinnamon roll hero. He is a little grumpy at times, but he has so much heart to him, and he is constantly adopting like baby animals, and it's just adorable. And he himself also has anxiety struggles. He's neurodivergent, and he has what I would call social anxiety. He has a really hard time being around other people, and with his neurodivergence, he has a hard time with like noises and with touch and everything. So like being social and being like at a town event where it's loud and there's a lot of people and there's a lot of chaos stresses him out to no end. He does not like it. And so he almost isolates himself a little bit because of that, because he doesn't like to be around a lot of people and doesn't like to deal with the chaos. And I really liked the way that the hero and the heroine kind of balanced each other, and they really helped lift each other and show their best sides of each other. And I thought it was so sweet, so good. So if you want to find some joy, would recommend In the Weeds. But that's the last one that I have. I have so many more that I could recommend, that I could say, but I hope that you find one that you associate with or that makes you feel seen. But that's going to be it for this video. So let me know down in the comments below if you have any other books that you love that have great mental health representation. But that's going to be it. So I hope that you liked this video. If you liked it, subscribe, stick around, see more content from me, and I hope you have the absolute best day.